showed me to watch instead of asking why. Start asking why not. Time flies when you're having fun. Time flies when you're lying in the sun. Bit by bit, the older that we get, the faster it tick, 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 ticks. Time flies. Whoa, whoa, time flies.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Marshfield Old School Times. This is our third episode. We're coming to you today from the lower level of the old school building here, Grand Central International, National, and International headquarters here in Marshfield, Missouri. We're very, very honored to have a couple of guys with us today that have been around Marshfield all their lives. Hoover Case, welcome. Thanks for being here today.
Hey, thanks for asking.
Absolutely. And we have Bill McFadin. Bill, thank you for coming in today.
You bet.
You guys are going to have some stories, probably predominantly from the 60s and growing up, maybe even in the 50s here in Marshfield. So a little bit different perspective than we had the last couple of weeks, and I'm really looking forward to it. Do want to, again, welcome you here today and appreciate all the support. We've had over about 250 views each week on our podcast, so we really appreciate that. And that's what will keep us going, is by people viewing it. And of course, our goal and objective is to get history documented, get it in the cloud, so to speak, so it'll be there. If you need to know how to log in, want to know how to log in, you can simply go to YouTube, Google YouTube, and then just type in Marshfield Old School Times, and it should come right up. The last two podcasts are there, and then now today's will be on there. Obviously, very happy to have my son, Logan Fraker, with the Tech Zone. He's our producer and technician, and we couldn't do this without him. So with that, I think we're going to move right on into our guest portion of the program. And Bill, again, welcome. Really glad you could make it today. And I think people may or may not know you. Hoover's name's a little more prominent because of all of the businesses he's been involved in with his family here in Webster County. But why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself and maybe growing up in Marshfield and who your folks were and so forth.
Well, like I said, I was born here, and the folks were Adrian and Beth McFadin. Dad was a truck driver for a long time. Mother was a country school teacher.
Okay.
And kindergarten teacher we had over at the house. Lived on Lucas Street over by the cemetery.
Okay.
And there's a lot of 80-year-old people now that went to her, you know, and
Yeah.
I went to her. Yeah.
I remember your mother, barely, but I remember her name.
And then she quit teaching and went to welfare officer at Canaan.
That's where I remember her from, I think.
Yeah, but had a good time. Had a big old holly tree in the yard that bared fruit every winter.
Bared fruit.
Yeah, the birds would love it.
Yeah.
And the cemetery didn't bother me living by it. So
Yeah.
I was brave.
I remember your mother. Didn't she work with Leona Brannigan? Mrs. Brannigan, Ronnie and David's mother. It seems like, because she worked, I think, for
Yeah, and
Danella Birchfield.
and Linda Blazer.
Yeah, Linda. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So again, as a child, as a young boy, I'm sure you rode your bike around Marshfield. Maybe came to the square and got a haircut and so forth.
Walked to school. Of course, it was just a little
Right.
jaunt.
Yeah.
And rode, you know, to the supermarket up there, Hobson's usually on the corner,
square. Yeah.
and to the Ritz. You know, that's the only thing we had of an evening until the pool opened up in the summertime.
Yeah.
Went to the show, and once I got older, got brave, might have went to the pool hall instead.
If you're like me, you weren't supposed to, but you might have slipped in there a time or two.
I tell you what, yeah, and then Mother grill you. what was on what you watch, you know. But I mean, it was small time, you know. Wasn't a whole lot to do. You visited a lot. You know, you had your friends. You'd go stay the weekend with them for 2 or 3 hours. Then a couple of weeks later, they'd come to your house. And even my folks would visit with other, parents.
Right.
Or not just parents, but
It's what you did in the
something
evenings.
you
Yeah.
had to do something. So you'd go out, you wouldn't eat with them. You'd just go later on, drink coffee all night.
Right.
And they'd have to drag me along,
Yeah.
you know, and I'd, hopefully they had some toys for me. This is when I was still young.
Right.
And, but that's what they did.
Yeah.
And then they'd come over to our house, you know, and
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I had 2 sisters and a brother, all older.
Okay, all older.
And the oldest, nearest one to me was 4 years older than me, so I was kind of left there to, when I was in high school,
Yeah.
you know, they all left. So I had to mow the yard and tend the garden.
Hmm. You graduated in 1967, right?
67.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, we'll get into this a little bit later. Kind of tumultuous times, the 60s, obviously, and maybe not as bad in Marshfield, Missouri as it was in,
Oh, no.
you know, the coast, California or wherever, but still, the culture was changing. Things were different at the end of the decade as opposed to how it was at the beginning of
As
the
far as
decade.
I know, it didn't change much in 67, you know,
Yeah.
up till then.
Yeah.
I didn't know what marijuana was.
Right.
You know, I knew some, I didn't listen to the news, so I didn't know about all the protesting going on.
Yeah.
Honestly, I just didn't care. I
Yeah.
was trying to have fun.
People, cars were kind of popular, weren't they?
I wouldn't know, I didn't have one until I went to work.
Oh, yeah.
And that's another thing, somebody had a car,
Yeah.
you know. Very few of them did, you know, parents bought them vehicles or something. And
Mhm.
you just rode around, there's just limited places to go.
Right. You're a member of the board of the Webster County Historical Society now,
Mm-hmm.
and I know you've studied a lot of history and
Yes.
probably go to the building up there, the museum, and can tell us a lot of stuff. Is there anything particular that you can think of that has always been interesting to you, a certain subject, or is there information up there that you've learned or read about that maybe you didn't know before you became a board member, something like that? I mean, we've always talked about President Bush's visit. That's been a big highlight for Marshfieldians, but there may be something else out there that you have discovered that you would want to share.
We're blessed with having old yearbooks. We don't have them all, but we've got 2 big binders of the country schools. Country schools are the one that fascinates me. My grandmother taught, my mother taught, my uncle taught, cousin of mine taught, Webster County and Wright County.
Yeah.
And to see their old pictures in there, I saw a picture of my grandmother from Sparklebrook, my grandmother McFadin,
Mm-hmm.
1909.
1909. Now, where was the Sparklebrook School at? I know where the interchange is out there.
They just there's a road, Sparklebrook Road,
Right.
where you can get off of it. That's it. The school was to the left,
Okay.
which would be west.
It's probably not there anymore.
Just no,
Right, yeah.
The old
just
rocks
down there
are
a
still
little
there,
bit.
the old stones are still there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Is there a church out there too affiliated? Sometimes there was, sometimes there
It's on a
wasn't.
farm now.
It's on a farm.
I don't remember a church.
Yeah.
It wasn't Sparklebrook Church.
Yeah, I never did hear of one, but
I'm sure there was.
They have an ice house there or something.
I don't remember who.
Yeah.
Sparklebrook.
well, last week or 2 weeks ago we had Pat Barr on, and he corrected me because I was thinking, or I'd always thought that the consolidation of the rural schools coming into Marshfield occurred about 1960, which was the time that they built the Hubble building, and they had to do that to accommodate the students. But I wasn't right. He was correct in that the consolidation actually happened a few years later in 65, which is when Marshfield built the junior high school. So there was an expansion because of the kids coming in, but the Hubble building had already been there about 5 years. So, a lot of changes. We talked about that then, a lot of changes in our school district, in the town, and the population during that time with growth and cultural change, going from the one-room schoolhouse in a community. And I know there was a lot of dissension. There was a lot of small school districts that didn't want that consolidation and all
Yeah.
come together. So different times than it is today, of course.
But I mean, I remember the influx of them coming in freshman year.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
through high
That'd have been
school.
65 then or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be right.
Hoover, how about you? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Like I said, many people know you, but I'm sure there's some things they don't know about you.
You know, I probably wasn't Marshfield's most outstanding student. Actually, I graduated in the top 10% of the lower 1/3 of my class.
Well,
So
you're not at the bottom then.
No, I wasn't quite there.
I barely beat you.
But school here was awesome. And Bill, boy, you've got a lot of knowledge there that I could hand back to the people as well. This was just a great place to live. And it's still, of course, it's growing all the time. It's different growth now, and it's still a great place to live. But Marshfield it's got lots of history. I'm glad that you're discovering some of it, and like I say, recording on it here that we can keep
We
this
think
forever.
it's important. We think it's
Yeah.
important.
Very.
Absolutely. So you both went to, in your case, 11 of the 12 years here in this building. You went 10 of the 12 years because they built the
Yes.
Hubble building,
Right.
and you had 6th grade that you attended over there.
Yes.
You attended 5th and 6th, I think we said. So predominantly though, you spent all your school years in this building, and
Yeah.
it would have been interesting. What was it like being a senior, you know, or having seniors here and then 1st graders in the same building? It had to be. I'm sure there was a few things that the young kids learned that maybe they shouldn't have from being in the same building, and maybe they kept them
I
separated
think we
enough it
couldn't go
wasn't a
past
problem.
the steps out here or
Well,
something out here.
Honestly, you know, you looked up to the junior high people
Yeah.
or the 6th graders.
Yeah.
You know, when you were younger. But no, I don't
Wasn't
remember
a
it
problem.
hardly at all.
Yeah. Was elementary in the 2nd floor on the east wing or the 1st floor on the east wing?
First floor.
Mine was.
1st floor. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think years and years ago it was on the 2nd floor. I know that's all shifted and changed over time, and of course you had the dining hall out back, the old Quonset wooden
Yeah.
dining hall that was brought down from Evangel or O'Reilly Hospital at the time. Now we may be rehashing this, but prior to that dining hall being brought in the early 50s, it was the lunchroom was the industrial arts building. Was what one particular student told me. But that was before the dining hall. So
Don't remember that.
yeah. So again, changes. Now you guys went to town for lunch if you wanted to, right? Go get a hamburger at one of the cafes. You didn't have to
Older.
eat here. Yeah, the older kids. Yeah.
I remember Bob's up here on the corner,
Mhm.
this side of Roos, or where Roos is now.
I think he had 20-cent hamburgers. Am I right about that?
And they were the best, greasiest onion hamburgers. But he also sold a square bun,
I don't remember.
just the bun,
Just the-
5 cents. Go up there and get that thing, and that was the best thing.
Yeah. Put butter on it or something.
About that thing, I think it was just,
What is he the one that had good donuts too? Somebody had good donuts up there. I always heard.
I
that
don't
Bob?
remember that.
Okay.
Now, might have because of that roll or bun, but it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like a big square hamburger bun, but it wasn't.
The sweet shop was still there, wasn't it, Bill?
Like we're
I
talking,
barely remember it.
barely.
And then Bob's replaced that.
No, the sweet shop was 2 doors
Oh,
down.
2 doors down. I see.
2 doors
Yeah.
that way. But just before you get to Henry Phelan's.
Yeah.
And I went in there, but not a whole lot.
Yeah. So
Didn't
what
have any money.
you mentioned Henry Phelan. So tell me about some of the other businesses, guys, around the square in those days. So we talked about Phelan's or Hobson's Market was back here on the south side. Was it on the corner? Because Phelan's Market was the green
Where
building.
Connie's portrait is.
Yeah, that
Hobson's,
was Hobson's. I kind of remember that.
Bert Neal had a grocery store over there
Yeah.
where Spriggs Insurance
Yes.
is.
Okay.
And then where the Webster County printing was another grocery store.
Yeah, that was like an
MFA, or was MFA?
MFA
Over
was
here,
across the
this-
street.
yeah.
where the hardware
And
building.
then Lane's had one down the street here on Highway A. We had a lot of grocery
Yeah.
stores. Lots of them.
And then I could walk down the lanes almost, but
Carl Young had
Yeah.
already moved to town. He was out on the obviously in the old building there where the laundromat is. Carl Young's grocery
never
store.
went out there, I don't think.
Well,
Well,
that was the highway. That was out there.
yeah, you
It was
know,
way out there.
and like you were talking, Henry Phelan for men, Jarrett's for
Mhm.
men's.
You could get Levi's at Jarrett's for $6.
$6.
I think that's what they were. And everybody had to have Levi's.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, yeah.
and Converse tennis shoes.
Yeah.
Then there was
Turn the
Muzzy's,
cuffs up.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh man.
Muzzy's Cafe around on the west side.
It,
I remember
I've
that.
been in there.
Yeah.
Andrews.
Shorty's, which I don't know what Shorty's was before Shorty, but
Andrews had those little round vinyl covered stools you come in. And Johnny was always cooking right there in front of it.
Yeah.
Get a meal for $1.25.
Has
I
a
remember
cigar in his mouth.
Yeah.
a few ashes might have flipped down in the gravy. But
Listen,
yeah,
quality control. I
yeah,
don't know.
it seasoned it. It seasoned it for sure.
But yeah, Shorty's came later. It was like
Yeah.
I say, Odell's and Shorty's
Yeah.
in my high school.
Shorty's had the round pies too.
Right. Granny made those.
Granny Bell.
Do you remember when the Ford dealership was on the square, or was that before your
I
time?
think we missed that one.
Yeah, that was, I think, 40s and maybe the real early 50s, but
Members.
Pierce's.
The only one I remember. The only one I remember is Scott had where the new jail is just
Yeah.
down there.
Yeah.
Where
Hard Scott.
community
Mhm.
center
That was AMC and American Motors, wasn't
When,
it?
when
Yeah.
my dad came
Remember.
to Marshfield way back there, he worked with somebody that sold Kaiser cars. And it may have been up there where the Ford dealership was, but didn't last very long. The Kaiser cars didn't prove out to
Was that a German-made car?
get parts for
Sounds
it.
like it does.
Probably
Yeah.
wasn't too popular, was it, in
Yeah.
those days?
But like I say, the pool hall and the sanitary barber shop was one of those barber shops, and drum rights came along,
Yeah.
and Mary's Variety. My gosh,
Oh, yeah.
See, if you went-
who can forget that?
Right.
If you went up this street here to saying you're going to Mary's Variety, there's a little alley there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you could go down that alley and come in the back door of the pool hall,
Yeah.
and your parents wouldn't know you was in there.
Yeah,
They wouldn't know how you got in there, or even know you were there.
they know. No, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
We talked last week, pool hall probably wouldn't have been so bad, but I think the cussing is what my folks didn't really, my mom didn't want me to be around, but other than that, it probably wasn't too bad. I mean, you probably
Well-
wouldn't have learned too many things you shouldn't have, but
Pappy Spriggs ran
Yeah.
it for years.
Pappy Spriggs.
Yeah.
He's the only one I know that run it.
Yeah.
yeah,
Pappy and Red,
yeah.
his boy.
So I know you played probably mad baseball because you were a pretty good athlete in school. I can remember that even when you were playing basketball when I was a little boy and on the team. I'm sure you played MAB club and all that started in
And,
your time.
There's advantages of being tall. You're going to get to play basketball.
Yeah, yeah.
Whether you want to or not,
Yeah.
you're going to get to play basketball. So I can always remember those winter trips that we get off the bus there, and my dad, in all his graciousness, had bought me a '52 Chevrolet car. I think it cost $75.
Yeah.
But it didn't have a heater in it. So we get off the bus out here after we'd been somewhere on that nice warm bus. But if you got that old car going fast enough, the heat, the air to come across those coils. So just because I was cold, I didn't go straight home, just lived right close by. But I'm gonna warm this thing up a little bit. But the worst thing about it, it was always reliable. We go to basketball games, it'd always start. But Marvin Lynham had a station out by where Taco Bell's located now.
The bomb
Bomb.
station.
And he had bulk oil, and it was used oil, bulk used oil in a little jar, and you could pump that oil into that jar and had a little pouring thing on it. And you could put it in your car. I had to put one of them in my car every day, every single day, and that I finally worked my way up to a Maverick as I got to college, but it was kind of embarrassing driving that old '52 Chevy.
It smoked.
Smoke. I mean, the air, it'd go right through it. And in that time, drag racing was a big deal. We had the
Yep.
Ozark Dragway,
Yeah.
and drag racing was really coming along in Ozark and all over the United States. It was big. So we decided at some one party we had here one night that we would And I'm so glad you did this, because I can tell these stories now that I couldn't tell then. I hope James, you're not watching this.
All of our parents have passed away, right?
And so we went out here on Highway A, and we'd rigged up a Christmas tree where you turned the lights on and everything else. I think Jim Greer built that. And we had classes and everything, but we also, it was such a big event after one of the parties, the Highway Patrol joined in on it too. So we saw those lights coming, and my race, I'll get rid of it first. My race was against Kent Wilkerson, another Chevrolet car, and they spotted me like 15 car lengths in my old 52 Chevy, and he beat me about 15 car lengths as well. But about the time he did that, we saw the lights all come on, so we went down a country road there, thinking we'll just, I had the Hartman boys with me and Bob Madison maybe, I'm not sure who all was there. So we jump out of that car and run hide in the woods as if that would help any. Well, here comes the car, all the lights on. We get a ticket, and so I had to go up here in juvenile court in front of Floyd Tiny Owen. And who's Doug Owens, who's in our class, his dad. Floyd was not tiny. He was about 6'5" and about 200 and something probably, and real scary. And so my dad marched me up there to his office, and that's all it took. Oh, it'd be no more drag racing. They threatened me with everything in the world. The drag racing days were gone.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that last week. Eric Burke and Dean Whitty were on, and of course, Eric kept talking about the statute of limitations. You know, they'd run out, so he could tell some of those stories. But we also did mention that, you know, you guys, you're about 10 years ahead of us in school and in life, and you know, it seemed like you know, the 60s were just times that things were changing, and you know, guys were doing stuff that probably their parents didn't do, and so forth, and of course then we all did too. But it was just kind of a time of, as we mentioned, you know, the short hair when we came into the decade. By the time the decade went out, you know, people had long hair and sort of an anti-establishment attitude in many cases. You know, elaborate on that a little bit more. I mean, like you said, Bill, it didn't really come to Marshfield till later, but still, there had to be some changes going on that made you think about all that. And in Vietnam, and you guys didn't. You told me you didn't end up going over there, but I'm sure, Hoover, you said you were pretty close.
Well, I drew number 4 in the lottery. The very first lottery they ever had, I drew number 4. And I was over in Oklahoma going to school, and we all sat around the room anticipating what we're going to draw. Well, that wasn't very fun when you draw number 4. Because I knew I'm going to the service,
Yeah.
which was fine. I was ready to go. I don't think I ever wanted to turn that down. I wanted to go serve my country. So I quit my job, and I get on the bus over there where Cecil Ragsdale's shop used to be. There was an old house there where the Greyhound bus stopped.
Yeah.
So I get on the bus, we ride to Springfield, and we're going to meet up with all these other candidates or whatever, inductees, and we're going to Kansas City. This is in December of whatever year it was, to be drafted into the service, whatever branch we were going to go in. So we get to up there, and we're waiting on the bus, and the guy comes up and said, "Are you guys waiting on the bus to go to Kansas City?" "Yes." "What's your name?" "Case." He said, "Here's your telegram." And it said, "Truman has died in Kansas City." And you can look all this up.
That was 1972 is when he died.
And he's passed away. They've closed all the government offices. Go home, we'll contact you later. And 30 days later, Nixon ended the war. I didn't get to go.
Yeah.
I would have went, but I didn't get to go.
Right.
And fast forward that a few years, we still had the draft board in Marshfield. And for some reason or another, that's another way I got to serve my country, because I had to be on the draft board.
Oh, yeah.
And I was on that several years
Yeah.
they were still using it then.
Yeah.
But bless Harry Truman, I just he changed my life.
Yeah.
Good old Harry.
Yeah. You guys also, you know, we had the Dairy Princess, had the Big Wig, We talked about the cafes around the square, but the drive-ins were always sort of a fun place to be, weren't they? I mean, I'm sure back in those they'd have car hops and so forth.
Dairy Princess did.
Yeah,
That was the first drive-in. I mean, there weren't even had a lot of drive-ins anywhere.
with car hops.
Well, then like,
You
Then
could
they'll
pull
say-
in and they'd bring your food out. to you.
yeah,
Yeah,
but then the big wig came,
yeah,
you know, and that was about it.
yeah.
And we were lucky. Early '60s, we got the bowling alley,
Hmm. Yeah,
and got to mention the old pool, the old
yep. The old pool.
nasty pool,
Yeah.
dressing rooms, but looked like a cave.
Yeah.
But it served many a youth.
Hmm.
You know, it was great.
Yeah.
Cold water.
The best Dairy Princess story that I can remember is you remember the spook light, Bill?
Yeah.
Everybody thought there was a spook light in Webster County. And it's out here past the golf course somewhere. And they could see the light and everything there. And it was
Is that
just
Spook
weird.
Holler or somewhere out
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Snooker house.
Snooker Holler, yeah.
we decided one evening, and you put about 7 or 8 18-year-old boys together, they tend to pool their resources about how we could do something really dumb. So we decided that we would, and Leroy Tarr, he should have been an actor. He should have went to Los Angeles. He was the perfect role for what we did. We put Leroy in the back seat of a car, and for some reason or another, don't ask me how, we'd found an old a rabbit somewhere that had died or whatever had happened to it, and we pulled all the fur out of it and took little ketchup packages and put them all over Leroy and put that fur on him. And then we practiced a little script about how he got attacked by the spook light. And that's what I remember when you said the Dairy Princess. So we go to Dairy Princess, and we got back in there, and we get all the girls over there from school, and they're looking at Leroy, and of course he's telling the story, and they didn't think to ask, well, why didn't you take him to the hospital? No, we wanted to go to Dairy Princess first and kind of show him off a little bit. But he didn't want to, we told him he didn't want to go to the hospital. He's too afraid to go there because he wasn't supposed to be out or something, whatever it was. But he did it perfectly. He did it perfectly. And that was one of the most cherished times of the Dairy Princess that I'll always remember.
Yeah. Dairy Princess, of course, Mr. McCaskill, the owner, and the Big Mac, allegedly. He was the first guy to come up with a Big Mac sandwich. And
Had the sauce on it.
yeah. Yeah, that was a good place. I certainly rode my bike down there a lot as a kid. Well, after you graduated from college, you got into the auction business, Hoover, with your dad, and then you've done some other things in your life, like the big ranch down in Texas.
I've had a lot of variation of things,
Mhm.
including in college. I went to Northeastern A&M when I went to college, and again, this is kind of it was a different world. You're not in high school anymore. You're in college, and it was totally different. You learned a lot of things. You met people there that from all over the United States.
Mhm.
So they decided that I might make a pretty good saddle bronc rider. And most generally, those guys are about 5'4" or 5, or pretty short guys, short center of gravity. I'm 6'4", bad center of gravity to be a saddle bronc rider. But they'd take me to rodeos, and I think they really liked the entertainment, because I'd make about 4 jumps and off I'd go into the wild blue yonder and get bucked off every time. But got through college, came back to MSU, and at that time it was SMS, and took agriculture there. One of my professors told me one time, he said, if you don't take me quail hunting and I get some quail, you're going to spend about another 4 or 5 years here at SMS because I'm not going to pass you till you find me some quail.
Getting hard to find by that time, weren't they?
It was getting a little
in the
bit different.
Ozarks.
A little different. So I left there, and my dad was buying farms with these other guys, so I got to be the cowboy and clean up the farms, and I'd get one just done and finished, and they'd sell it, and we'd go off to another brush pile somewhere and do that. But the the aspect of being involved in agriculture has been really good for me. I've done it my whole life. I've enjoyed it very much. During some of my single years, I did a couple of other things, which you'll find unusual. I helped manage a circus once in San Antonio, Texas, and that I praise Marshfield for giving me that background and that common sense to be able to go do that. But to elaborate on that a little bit, I'd worked in the fair industry and got involved in fairs there at Springfield, and I'm going to get around to the circus there in just a minute. But I was there at the fair, and I was 16 years old, my first job, and I tell everyone I was out in front of the grandstand in front of 6,000 people on the stage. And they really get excited about that. Well, what were you doing? I said, I was cleaning up after the elephants is what I had to do.
Yeah, that was
So
exciting.
I got really involved in that fair business, which is a huge business worldwide, outdoor entertainment. And I wound up in San Antonio, Texas when I was single. And I helped manage a circus and a carnival there that came once a year. The Alcivar Shrine Temple had a circus once a year, and those things of that background. By the way, the circus wasn't very good, and I didn't keep that job because I didn't think I wanted to travel up and down the road the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But all of those things, and I think Bill, you'd agree. You come back to those first 18 years of your life, and I think all three of us sitting here could tell you quite a bit about those first 6 teachers you had in school. After that, we went to different classrooms.
Yeah.
But those first 6 teachers were character builders.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They're the ones that, and not that I don't remember a lot of the rest of them, but they're the ones that built the character here in Marshfield, Missouri.
Right.
And Mrs. McDonald, if she was 4th grade,
Yeah.
I believe, and if you did your multiplication tables correctly, I think you probably
Yeah.
missed her.
I did. No, I had Miss
Oh,
McDonald.
you did.
She was
And
still
she'd take
teaching.
you uptown. That's when we could go uptown,
Yeah.
wherever, and she'd let you have a malt or something.
Mhm.
I don't remember what it was, but it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And you were kind of embarrassed if you didn't get to go get a malt. You know?
Those teachers in those days, they stayed put. They were here a long time. I mean, they didn't move around, and
No.
they were
Yeah.
generally local people, local families, the wives of businessmen, so forth. And Mrs. Deckard was the elementary principal when I was at Hubble in
Really?
elementary school, and she had been my dad's elementary teacher, and then became the principal. I think you guys probably had her for principal,
Yeah.
or at least
I
as a
was
teacher.
in Mrs. Holmes' room, which is on the
Yes.
far corner over here.
Yes.
And Mrs. Deckard had a little petition principal's office.
Yes. Yeah.
And we used to have to sit there in the 1st grade and listen to kids get spanked back there. And
Yeah.
it was kind
She
of
would do
cruel
that too.
a little bit.
Absolutely.
And of course, Mrs. Holmes had a very well-behaved class, knowing that right next door was the paddle.
That's right. That's right.
And-
But there
and-
was a lot of those teachers. Mrs. Case was one of your kin to one of your kin, or married one of your kinfolk, and I mean they were all there. A lot of them had been here since the 40s, and of course this was the 60s. So, but they stayed a long time. Didn't move around and so forth.
Well, like you said, they did a lot of them from Springfield now, driving in,
exactly.
or out
yeah.
of town.
Yeah.
And I had Mrs. Hyde for 1st grade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was right across the high. But,
She was the first.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Neil. It was Neil then,
Yeah.
Linda Neil.
Yeah.
Then she
Her
got
dad
married.
had the
Yeah.
grocery store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you
But-
talk about that culture. There's a famous quote by a Harvard businessman, and I learned this quote in later years. It's called "Culture Trumps Strategy." You can you can go out and get all the education you want to and so forth, or hire people that have all kinds of education. But the culture of those people will trump some of the strategies, some of the academics that they may have. You need both, but it's so important. And those cultural things were taught to us in those years, whether it was by our parents, our grandparents, our teachers, our Sunday school teachers, kind of all of them helped contribute to give us the culture that we all understand here in Marshfield.
Well, I mean, nowadays it's different. If you got in trouble here, you got in trouble at home too,
Yeah, right.
and, it was just different times. Didn't have many bullies to speak of.
No, because
You
they'd be
know.
somebody take care of it for
Yes.
you, whether it was the
Yes.
principal or the parent or a buddy or whatever.
It was just good
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, really was. Well, Bill, what your career? What you went on after school, and what did you do in life most of your
Not much.
days?
Well, I started SMS, got done with that. Didn't graduate, but I got done with it. Went to labor union, concrete, a lot of concrete work, paving,
Mm-hmm.
asphalt paving.
Mm-hmm.
Spent a year on the railroad
Okay.
on Frisco. Then I went to work Kraft Foods for 29 years,
Okay.
basically.
Yeah.
Then I'm at the museum.
Pretty good career. Craft was a good place to work.
It was.
I'm sure it still is,
really
but
is.
it was really good in those days.
Yeah.
My dad worked for him 10 years, and yeah, always had good memories of Kraft cheese and those as a kid, and caramels. He had caramels. He was a field serviceman.
Forgot about
Kraft.
caramels. We had
Mhm.
Christmas time.
Yeah.
All got the little square caramels.
Yeah, square caramel. And he'd get those little deals of cheese, big chunks, and take them to his dairy farmer customers and deliver those. And we always had cheese, but see how our time's running here. Oh, we're in good shape. We got 22 minutes, so we got time for lots more stories, guys. I'm sure there's some
Well,
more things that will come to
okay,
your mind, Bill.
my turn, Hoover.
Yeah.
I got talking about Hoover. We used to, Hoover was into it, I think, with us, me and another guy had some pig roast. And Hoover talking about riding a bronc. I think my buddy had some calves pinned up out there. And at the end of the night, you got on one of them. You remember that?
Parts of it, yeah.
Well, let me tell
Parts
you,
of
it
it.
didn't last long. It kind of slid off, I
It's
think.
kind of like the first time I was doing college.
But I didn't know if you remember that or not.
Yeah, there's parts of that whole picnic that were vague.
Well, okay, yeah, me too.
It sure seemed like a lot of fun at the
They
time.
were great.
But we were long past being 18 years old then.
We
Quite a
we
ways.
knew better.
Yeah, but it was probably still at a time where it was original fun. It was nothing to hurt anybody or nothing to do
People
anything
loved
wrong.
it. People loved
And
it.
it was just getting together and having a good time.
And now, Lyndall's taking over with the reunion fest.
Well, we think Reunion Fest is a good time for people to reconnect and in a good, clean way that
Yes.
people seem to enjoy, and it was really encouraging this year. The crowd was back. COVID's over. We made the decision to go ahead next year and schedule it the last Saturday in June because there's no conflicts with the fair, with Starvey Creek or anything like that. So the 4th will be on a Thursday. Parade will be Thursday, but Reunion Fest will be that Saturday prior. And we kind of surveyed the people, and that's what everybody said. Yeah, this works better for us than waiting until the weekend of the 4th, which this next year would be after the 4th, which people are kind of in a mood to get back to
They're
the
tired.
real world. They're tired,
Yeah.
and the 4th's over, and fireworks are over, and
You got
So
to get
we're-
back home if
Yep,
they're from out
yeah.
of town.
So and then you've got the fair going on, and you got Starvey Creek going on. So
Yeah.
we won't have to compete with them, and we did like we did in this year, which worked out really well. So we're going to do that and carry it on. But
And then everybody's happy.
I think so. I
Yeah,
think so.
It was a fantastic idea, and I know I've thanked you and Bill has and lots of
Yeah.
others, but you and your wife and family and all the people that work on that, thank you for
Well,
thinking up that idea to make it all inclusive for every class,
Really?
it really has turned out well.
Yes.
And I don't know of any community that
Yeah.
has anything quite like that.
I think we've all been able to connect with each other, even those that didn't. I didn't know Bill very well prior to Reunion Fest, quite frankly. And, you know, it's a way to get to know people beyond just the class you graduate with.
Yeah.
So I think it's been good. We hope to carry on.
And you get to see people that you hadn't seen in a while.
Right.
It might be underclassmen, you know, or whoever.
Yep.
If you remember them, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we all went to school with the 3 years ahead and 3 years below.
That's,
I mean, so
that's just it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Anyway,
you've done a very
well,
first-class job.
we've had a lot of
doing
good
that.
help.
Yeah.
First-class job.
Yeah.
Good job.
Don't forget you're on my committee. You knew that, right?
Well, I think I did.
Anyway, we appreciate that. So after you guys, you know, you had got going in your careers and had your families, and I know Hoover, you obviously had something happen to you, and you're in a wheelchair, and I'll just tell you, you're a remarkable guy. People that know you know how you maneuver with that and carry on, and it's a character trait that not everybody would do, can do, and you're very much admired for the
Well,
way
you know,
you've been able to continue in the community, supporting anything that goes on, any event. It's just it's pretty remarkable.
things happen to you that you don't expect, but no, this isn't all bad because I get a great place to park. I don't have to mow the yard. I don't have to carry in groceries or do anything else like that. And actually, I've been able to walk for a couple of years, but I don't want to tell anybody.
Typical Hoover, wasn't it,
Well,
Bill?
yeah.
Typical Hoover. Yeah.
But,
Well,
but it's brought a lot of stories. In 1993, I walked into what was in St. John's Hospital.
Yeah.
And I woke 3 days later from a coma and with bacterial meningitis.
Yeah.
And going to rehab for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week for a year, you really get to meet a lot of people. And I know, thinking back on the background and the culture that Marshfield, Missouri has continued to produce, that has helped me, along with many others, being able to deal with things that are out there. And I totally contribute that to a lot of what we all grew up in.
Yeah.
It was the right place. You had to work. Nothing was impossible. You had to do it. And whether you wanted to or not,
Yeah.
it had to be done.
right.
And but it was always fun to watch those guys. And I was there for a year. I get to see them all.
Yeah.
And two guys came in one day. They were on some kind of a health program for exercise. Looked pretty healthy to me, much better than me. And I heard them talking over there, and I said, when we get done here, we're gonna go over and paint Tommy's house, and he'll pay us cash. And I told my therapist that. She says, I'll fix that in the morning. So these two guys show up, and she said, well, we had to change your therapy. You need to come in at 9 o'clock in the morning and again at 2. Said, we can't do that. We got to pay. Okay, no,
Yeah,
you're right. Yeah. And 2 days later, they got well and went back to work. But and again, going back to the culture of this school system and this community, I think all of those, there's so many people that I hope you get them to express that. This is 18 years, your first 18 years in Marshfield, Missouri are awesome.
Yeah.
And those first 12 grades, that's when you build a character.
Right.
Well, you just make friends easier in a small town like this growing up.
Right.
You know, you don't make friends with everybody, but mostly. And it carries on.
Yeah. You know, Bill, your service to the Historical Society is it should not go unnoticed as well. You know, there's so much community service that we can be doing, and you know, it takes time. It takes time from people's lives to do those things. That's a great organization. I know they started that with probably no money and kind of on a shoestring, just a bunch of volunteers. And
Yeah.
now you've got a great facility that's preserving history, and that's important. That's what we're doing here, is trying to preserve history. and your time that you spend over there. It's to be admired, and certainly appreciate that. I'm a history buff, as you can tell. I love history, and I've been blessed with, with wanting to learn and preserve more about history. I'm glad that I want to do that, but it does take time, and it takes a lot of effort. And I know, again, you guys, the board over there, you spend undue hours. I know my uncle Don Roast has been on the board there in the past and spent umpteen number of hours, and now his daughter Linda's the director, I think. And by the way, next week Don and Leona are going to be my guests, so
good.
we had to get a lady on here, and of course Aunt Leona, they're both, I think, 92 and
they'll have a lot of
very
history.
sharp, and a lot of good stories, all the way from presiding commissioner to being on the historical board and so forth. So I look forward to that next week with them.
But I'll also in some
Uh-huh.
on the museum.
Yeah.
We've got tons of old pictures up there of the town.
Yeah.
They were called blocks then and everything. Of course, the tornado, a lot of stuff was gone. Museum was built in 1911. All 4 of those buildings, the churches and everything, were like a year apart.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Oh, the old Christian church too.
yeah.
Really?
Within
And this building
3 or
was
4
built in
years.
16, so that's only 5 years
Yeah.
later. Yeah.
And school. We can remember when the gym opened, going to watch them play
Yeah,
basketball in
54.
the night gym. Yeah.
54. That
Well, that seemed like they played one year. I came in '56.
Well, they still may have not remodeled that yet, but that build, the plans we have are dated 54. It may have taken a year to get it built.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But museum just got a ton of old pictures, great pictures.
Is the old gym over here still accessible, the one that's down underneath?
You can, it's 4 feet down, and obviously you can go down there.
Is the
And we've
floor
been down
still there?
No, they pulled the floor up and I was told that they may have used some of that floor in this other gym, whether it was the stage or whatever. I don't know that, but it's concrete. It's concrete down there, and they've got pillars. They poured pillars to support the new floor that they put in to build the classrooms.
That was the basketball floor
Mm-hmm.
down underneath the.
Yeah, that floor on the first level over there was not there, and those rooms weren't there. It was all one big open gym. The second floor was up there, and then you walked in and went down a few steps, about 4 feet down, and that was the gym floor. And there were bleachers on the sides, not very many, but a few bleachers on the sides, and there was a stage on the south end, a small stage. And when you go down there, you can still see the paint on the walls, and there's a set of steps on the far end down there that are still there. But the floor, the gym floor itself, the wood floor was removed when they put the new floor in there, and they poured those pylons to support the beams for that floor. So
I remember
I never remember that hole being there.
I don't think we ever knew it till
oh
a lot
yeah,
of
that
years later.
No.
crawl hole.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, see, that floor had.
never know.
So you guys may remember when that was, they called that the little gym, what we call the
Yeah.
library. So they had a wood floor. Actually, that's probably where they used some of the original. They had a wood floor underneath that carpet. It's still there, and there's a part of it I pulled back, and you could see the stripe for like Foursquare or something, But when they first built this gym, they kept that one area there and called it the little gym, and it was where that's why there's a stage in there. They had their assemblies, their elementary assemblies and plays, and then the elementary kids would go in there for PE and stuff, instead of going over here to the big
We
gym.
had our FFA meetings in there.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Because we had to have a room big enough to
Yeah,
get all the
yeah,
classes.
yeah. It
in
was an
there.
assembly room. They call
Yeah.
it an assembly room. Tom Henson said he remembered they called it the little gym, but it was not. I mean, they didn't have basketball goals in there, I don't think, because it wasn't high enough because they'd raised it up 4 feet. See, but
So when we were in grade school over there, that stairway, that's I guess you get to the stairway and you couldn't go any further if you were in grade school. That was the magic mark right there.
Mhm.
You better not be caught past there.
Yeah.
So, but for some reason or another, we got to go down into the furnace room and clean the erasers. You remember cleaning? Did you ever clean erasers?
Yeah.
They had an old vacuum cleaner down
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Well, that was kind of a treat just to go down there. Of course, every once in a while you'd catch a teacher down there smoking.
Yeah, I
They
was going to
weren't
say
supposed
that
be.
some of the high
Yeah.
school boys were probably smoking down
and,
there
and
too.
probably
They
some of the kids too. But that was kind of a treat. We got to go past the steps down to that room and clean. I mean, it's kind of privilege to get to go clean those erasers and bang them all together and get that chalk dust all over you.
We talked last week, so some of our more vivid memories of this gym was as boys in the 60s coming and watching guys like you and Jerry Minor and Dave Replogle and all those guys play basketball in the late 60s, early 70s, you know. And you walk in the front, the popcorn from the FFA boys popping it right there in the front door, you know. And you get in there, and the stage band, the acoustics were in there when that was full of people, were phenomenal. That stage band, you just walk in there, and they were playing some, you know, popular brass song, and then you guys would come out in your warm-ups and start shooting layups, you know, for getting ready for it was just phenomenal as a kid to watch that, and the place would just be packed, and all the kids would sit together, the parents were over on this side, and very, very good
I
memories.
remember a coach, Coach Snowden, and I thought his class was in this room. And some people may have read this book or have seen it. It's called Hicks from the Sticks, about the Combs boys from Bradleyville.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in the 60s, that all there was to do much in Bradleyville was to play basketball all
Shoot
year.
hoops.
They were really good, though.
They were became a story and a book.
Yeah.
Mr. Combs wrote a book about it. And so our coach decided, well, we should go down there and play basketball at the Bradleyville gym, which was about the size of this old gym
Yeah,
over here.
yeah.
So I was given one of the Combs boys. I don't remember which one it was that I was supposed to guard, but we had the tip off, and that's the last time I saw him from the whole game. They were doing behind the backs and over the head and no look passes in the 60s
Yeah.
that were just phenomenal. They could have beat any. They should have been the overall state champion.
All
It
of
was
them grew
awesome.
up together,
Yeah,
playing
Every day.
every day.
yeah. And the book's been out for a few years. Was it their coach? Did he?
Leon Combs, I think, is the name. Maybe I
Was
may
he
be
the
wrong.
coach, or was he the star player?
He was the player.
Yeah,
The
that's right,
Combs
yeah,
boys were,
yeah.
were the players.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting story. I'd have to go back and look at that again, but
But
they-
you
kind
never
of a
lived.
national,
They were good.
kind of a national
They were
story.
good.
Yeah.
You never lived till you played
Yeah.
a game in the Bradleyville. That
Yeah.
old
So you
Bradleyville
did that.
gym.
You Marshfield did that.
Oh yeah, we were there. We,
Yeah. Yeah.
we should have just sat on the bus and not went in.
Well, we got about 6 minutes left. Bill, the Historical Society, give us the hours and tell us a little bit about, you know, what you do when you go there, like volunteer and so forth.
Well, I've been volunteering for, I think, 12 years.
Yeah.
The hours are Tuesday through Friday, some
Okay.
Saturdays, and 1 to 4.
1 to 4. Okay.
1 to 4. Like I say, if you in town and need to run through it, we can do it.
Yeah.
Just make an appointment or call us.
Right. And you got a lot of stuff in the archive building over there. You got just all kinds of documents that
We
people
got probate and
yeah,
people have
court records and
court records, circuit court, and people have made their own family histories.
Yeah.
And put it over there. Maddie Day Hyde section over there, she's gone through. I mean, McFadins are in there and everybody else probably. She's kin to them some way, I don't know how.
right.
But
What's in the old library building now?
that's the main museum.
That's the main museum.
Yeah.
Okay.
The research center is what we're talking about.
Next door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we've got, like I say, displays for Hubble, of course, and people bring in stuff. We've just got an array of stuff.
Yeah. And you got stuff probably you can't even get displayed. There's so much stuff.
We're running out of room.
Yeah.
Running out of room. Have you got any room? But if you haven't been in a while, it's quite a place.
Yeah, it's really a jewel for our county and Marshfield to have that and preserve that history. It's important.
It's no building, but
Yeah.
Did you keep the old hardwood floors in the main part of the library? And
yes,
that was just a fun place to
Yeah.
go.
yeah.
And I don't remember who I just really young when I went in there, and it was absolutely, you're not going to talk when you come in that
Miss
library.
Dickey,
Miss Dickey, that's right. No
50
talking.
years she
Yeah.
was there.
Yeah, no talking.
And I remember going in as a kid, you know.
Yeah.
But it's still a great old building, like all these buildings I'm talking about.
Yep.
You know, the condo and Methodist and Christian church.
It's great to see them stay alive and be revived and
people have
preserved.
done it,
It's really
yes.
important. We think it's important here, and that's why we're trying to do that. And
And I'm glad somebody's still running the church up here at the Methodist.
Yeah.
Whatever, I forget the name of it.
Crossbridge or
Crossbridge,
what? Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just
Yeah.
old buildings.
Hoover, you're still selling real estate. Now you did retire from the big auction you did in Texas.
I started
all those
in
years.
I did that 41 years. I sold registered cattle
Yeah.
all over America,
Yeah.
from Florida to California. It was awesome, a
Yeah.
career to get to do.
Yeah.
I sold the King Ranch sale, and
Mm-hmm.
and again, I always from the auction part of it, growing up selling local farm sales here and glassware and pots and pans, you never forget where you came from.
Yeah.
And I know that there's so many people that are have so much heritage about Marshfield, Missouri. And I think that was part of why I got accepted into that group, so
Yeah.
to be there. But it was an interesting career. I met a lot of people. I met people that didn't really make their money sometimes out of cattle, baseball players and football players,
Sure.
and different persons like that. We even had a bull one time that a Maine on Jew bull that we sold. He was called Here's Johnny, and they had given it to Johnny Carson. Of course, it's just a publicity stunt, but we sold that bull one time.
Yeah.
It was quite
But
a
some of them
feat.
brought some big money.
It was really interesting.
I
I
bet.
loved it to death.
Yeah.
Didn't want to quit, but
Yeah.
41 years and
Yeah.
30 of those years I did out of this.
Yeah.
So
amazing. It's
it
amazing.
was still a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You know,
Awesome.
riding those front end loaders up sometimes, and this thing sitting in this always was a little bit of an issue, but it was all right.
That's great. That's great. Well, guys, it's really been fun. I really appreciate you coming in and taking some time on your Saturday to share about days gone by in Marshfield and at Marshfield School and a little bit about what you've been doing since. We hope everybody enjoys this podcast. We want to make it fun and make it interesting. We also want to make it, as I said, a historical document. So if anybody's got any suggestions, ideas, don't hesitate to let me know. We're on Facebook right now, just under my Facebook, and or you can Google YouTube, Marshfield Old School Times, and pull up the podcasts. And of course, we'll read all the comments either way, and we welcome those. But thank you all for listening. We're going to let you go today, and we'll see you next week, same time, same station, with Don and Leona Roast, my aunt and uncle. With some history from their perspective. It'll go back just a little further than we've done so far. So hope to see you then. If not, you can review it anytime. Thank you all. Have a good week.